They is the extent of our agenda, which is plenty good. So we will begin by opening the hearing for House Bill 2268. And Mr. Revisor, if you'd give a brief on that before we get going, and we'll see if there's any questions ahead of testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, House Bill 2268 is a bill held over from last session. It was introduced in 2023. The bill would amend the Kansas Uniform Common Interest Owners Bill of Rights Act. This is a statute that provides some general governance over the conduct of homeowners associations. It would add a new statute to that act regarding the regulation of solar energy devices by homeowners associations. And the bill essentially proposes to prohibit homeowners associations from restricting the installation of such devices on the rooftop of any home that's a part of the association. It does allow association to adopt rules regarding the placement of these devices. However, those rules cannot prevent the installation, impair the function of, restrict the use of, or adversely affect the cost or efficiency of those devices. So there is some limitation there as to those rules that they could adopt. This also only applies to the installation of the solar energy devices on homes. It does not address installation of these devices anywhere else on any common property in the association's real property. That's the extent of the bill. It would go into effect on July 1st of this year, and I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Committee, do you have any questions to begin? Look forward to a number of testimonies. We appreciate your help, sir. And we'll move on to our first oral will be proponent. And we'll start with a list of Mark Horst of King Solar Incorporated. Thank you, Mark, for your attendance. And if you give your name and your association and your testimony. Thank you.
Chairman, my name is Mark Horst, owner of King Solar. We're a solar energy contractor based in Yoder, Kansas, and we currently employ more than 20 Kansans in rural Reno County. Appreciate your time today looking at House Bill 2268, which will protect the freedom of Kansans to be able to harness the sunlight that's falling on all of our homes across the state. Currently, there are no limitations to the restrictions that homeowners associations or covenant communities can put on rooftop solar. And I want to give you a few examples. There's more in my written testimony, but I want to give you a few that we're dealing with right now. One is one of my customers installed a system, contracted with us to install a system that was in compliance with their HOA. The HOA's rules at the time said not street facing. The solar panels couldn't face the street. And so we installed the system perpendicular to the street in compliance with those rules. I do have a picture in my written testimony that shows a house similar to the one I'm referencing with the solar panels perpendicular to the street. After the installation, the HOA adopted new rules that says it can't be visible from the street. Well, if you walk a little bit down the street and kind of look sideways, you can see them from the street. This homeowner got a letter saying he has to move them now. It's going to be costly to him. He's going to have to pay us to move them, pay to repair the shingles, and then it will reduce the efficiency of his system by about 15% annually. That is currently allowed under legislation. The other one I want to point attention to is coming up in the near future, we have a customer that desires to install, they've contracted with us to do a system that does comply with their HOA rules. The HOA rules will require him to use a roof face that's not optimal for his system. He does have a roof face, and this is, I'm going to reference the chart number 2 in my written testimony. He has a roof face that would be 93% efficient for solar panels in our region. They're actually asking him to, or requiring him to install, I actually had to extend the chart to show it. It would only be 63% efficient on the north-facing slope of his home. If you ask any reputable solar installer in the state of Kansas about facing panels to the north, they're going to look at you funny and ask lots of questions because that just doesn't make sense. And so that's another story of a homeowner we're working with currently. This bill, however, does not give homeowners full license to do anything they want. If you look at line 10, it does say that the homeowners associations are allowed to adopt reasonable rules. Some of those rules that we would like to see and we think are important are solar panel color. So there's basically two solar panel colors available on the market today. The one on this half is a white backsheet, blue solar cell, and comes with a silver frame. Would look pretty nice on a light shingled roof. Whereas this half here is a dark solar cell, dark backsheet, and comes with a black frame. Would look a lot better on a dark shingled roof. That is something that does not affect cost substantially, and we believe should be included in HOA and covenant rules. I've given in my written testimony 2 examples of bad solar installations. This is photo number 3, and it shows a solar panel with conduit kind of all over the roof. It's exposed, it doesn't look good, shouldn't be installed anywhere, particularly in homeowners association or covenant communities. We believe this is a bad installation. The other one would be photo number 4, shows a solar panel system that doesn't actually fit on the roof. It hangs off the top, and there's actually a solar panel in the bottom left that is running into another roof section and isn't actually attached properly. So we do believe that there are rules that should be enforced in covenant communities. Those rules that I would recommend are the color options that I mentioned a little bit ago, the tilt of the solar panels, making sure they're flush with the roof slope. The panels need to fit on the roof, as I mentioned in my photo here. And then the conduit should be required to be under the solar panels, and if there is an attic space, concealed within the attic. These requirements that I'm mentioning don't substantially increase the cost. They don't decrease the efficiency, and we believe that they would be good things for HOAs to adopt. So basically, I think that Kansans should have the freedom to absorb the solar energy, secure their energy, get energy security for their families, and install good-looking systems. Photos 5 and 6 in my written testimony are what I would consider good solar installations. They are a dark solar panel on a dark shingle. They are following the roof lines, and they have concealed conduit. This bill will continue to progress our state into the future and allow companies like ours to continue to provide quality jobs for Kansans. I'm happy to stand for questions if you wish.
Yeah, we will, we'll take all 4 of the proponent testimonies first, and then we'll have, if any questions for individuals, we'll have you called up. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next we have Alan Bauman. Bauman, is that correct? Okay, and private citizen, state of Kansas. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Alan Bauman. I live in Prairie Village, and I'm a private citizen testifying as a proponent of HB 2268. Why do I care? These restrictions are an intrusion into my financial choices and decisions, and it's important to understand that. In my particular HOA, which does have solar rooftop restrictions, I don't have the choice to reduce my utility bills, which are high and escalating every year. The placement of solar rooftop will not only save me money, but it's been proven to increase the value of my home. If I were to buy a home, I would love to buy a home that has reduced utility bills, so it only makes sense. Additionally, I'm eligible currently for a 30% tax credit. That is not indefinite, but currently it is on the books. Because of this, these restrictions are financially punitive to me and fellow Kansans. So nearly 30 states have solar access. These include states which value individual choice, such as Texas, Florida, and nearly all the western states. Our fellow state of Missouri passed a very similar bill in 2022. There are thousands of HOAs in Kansas, and it is impossible for us to litigate our way through all these HOAs in a timely fashion. I want to speak about the security that rooftop solar provides. Kansas City is where I live. We have power outages on the average of once or twice a year, usually big snowfalls in the winter and then big summer storms. So they're during the coldest times and the hottest times of the year. A home with rooftop solar will serve as an emergency shelter, and it has been shown to do that during hurricanes and other events in other parts of the country. I personally have experience with this. I lived in Texas for a while. I was fortunate enough when the hurricane came through that my home was the only one in the 3-block radius that had power. Our house was packed, but we had air conditioning. It was extremely important. And so the final thing is this debate reminds me of when I moved into my HOA. Wood shingles were required on every rooftop. Litigation ensued. It took many years, and eventually we converted to choice. And within a couple of years, over half the homes had composite slate, or tile shingles of various hues, blues, greens, reds, all subtle. But I'll let you know, I never heard a single neighbor complain about the change of shingles, and our house values escalated. So I think we're facing a similar situation here. And because solar offers so many personal advantages, and for fellow Kansans, I urge you to pass HB 2268. We deserve the freedom to chart our own financial course. Thank you for your consideration.
And once again, if you're available in a little bit, there may be questions. Thank you. Next, we have on the list Malcolm Proudfit, Good Energy Solutions Incorporated. Are you here? Thank you, sir. If you'd give your name and your interest.
Yes, sir. Good morning, Chairman Berquist and members of the committee. Thank you for your time. My name is Malcolm Proudfit, and I'm the CEO of Good Energy Solutions. We're a solar and electrical contractor based in Lawrence, Kansas. Happy to stand today in support of this bill, in full support of this bill. And just for brevity's sake, I will refrain from going into a number of specific examples that I could provide. But I encourage you to all reference Mark Horst's written testimony. He has some particularly egregious examples. Let's see. I will say this morning that, in short, dozens and dozens of our customers have been denied the privilege of installing solar on their home due to HOA restrictions. Or they have had to incur extra burdensome costs if they were allowed to go solar. Often, customers decide just going solar is too much of a headache and decide that foregoing making their neighbors angry at them is a better choice than getting solar. By and large, the main issues we see are HOAs just simply not allowing solar to be installed, asking that solar installations do not face the street or can be visible from the street at all, eliminating a lot of optimal roof faces for the installation of solar. But the biggest example is just not allowing solar installations at all. And that is mainly why I'm here advocating for this bill. In addition to advocating for solar in the state of Kansas, where Good Energy Solutions does most of its business, I also sit as a board member of the Missouri Solar Energy Industries Association, or MOSIA for short. In 2022, MOSIA advocated for Senate Bill 820, a bill which incorporated very similar language to the bill that we're discussing here today. That bill was signed into law in June of 2022. This bill accomplished many things. First, it removed the power of HOAs to place a blanket ban on solar in any of their communities. Often these bans were unfortunately put in place for just political reasons rather than preserving community aesthetics. Second, this bill placed an impetus on HOAs to put reasonable guidelines in place for the installation of solar in their communities. Third, it gave power to solar advocacy groups like MOSIA or Renew Missouri to fight against HOAs that went against that law by either threatening lawsuits or initiating lawsuits to protect the rights of people who wanted to get solar installed on their homes. This bill that we're considering today will place power back in the hands of individual homeowners to control their carbon footprint and to save money by accessing the abundant solar resource that we all have. I will note that I'm happy to make myself a resource for any of you as you consider this bill, or if there are any questions on solar generally, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have Zach Pastora from the Kansas Sierra Club. Welcome, Zach.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. Zach Pastora, proud lobbyist for the Kansas Sierra Club. We have nearly 5,000 members across this great state. And I'll say, Chairman, you couldn't have picked a more lovely and sunny day for this hearing. I really appreciate it. I want to address my comments first in the context of how Sierra Club had got involved in this bill. we had been following solar bills across the country for a long time, and it's no secret the Kansas Sierra Club supports solar and generally allowing people to provide energy efficient, smart energy solutions that can help reduce our impact on the environment, et cetera. So we've been thinking about this. We heard about the bill that passed in Missouri. And then we got a call from Will Steckline out of Olathe, Kansas. And Will couldn't be here today because he's a truck driver and had his Department of Transportation exam this morning. But he asked me to help tell the story. And I'll say this, that Will is a self-identified conservative Republican, about as diehard Republican as it gets, he says. And he said, I didn't do this for the environment. Actually, it was his brother that called us because of getting Sierra Club involved because he was a Sierra Club member. But Will said, I did this because I want to take my energy bill in my own hands, and our monopoly utility keeps on raising my rates, and I want to do something positive for my home and family. Okay, so that's where he's coming from in all this. His wife's a school teacher, is my understanding, and so that's his reason for going solar. Besides just, and many of our members are doing it because not only their energy bills, but because of the environment too. So I offer that, and then I'll look back in the 29 states that have passed similar laws that will provide solar access. And I see the Missouri bill that was carried by 2 Republicans passed in their House, 112 to 35 and 32 to 0 in the Senate. Texas passed it in 2021, 31 to 0 in the Senate, 126 to 16 in the House. And then Indiana was carried by 4 Republicans and 1 Democrat, 84 to 7 in the House, 40 to 8 in the Senate. So it just shows that not only is bipartisan support, but carried by Republicans across those conservative states. And I said, why not Kansas? Okay, and you hear from several folks that have been affected by these prohibitions against solar. A lot of them in your written testimony, many more that have been encountered by their solar businesses. But I'll just say that, there's an element of individual freedoms here and liberty and doing what you can to take matters into your own hands, and let alone to help local businesses in the state of Kansas. Those that have heard me on the Energy and Utilities Committee know that we're one of the top 10 states for the sun and solar resource, but we're in the bottom 10 for solar power. And it's just a shame when we have an in-state solution that people can harness themselves and help the electrical grid, that they should be allowed to do it. And, their community government association, Representative Thomas, whose constituent was Will Steckline, who sponsors the bill, he jokes about how HOAs are the 4th branch of government. And I thought that was a pretty good point. But all to say that there is an opportunity here to help Kansas right here and now. Will Steckline, his HOA told him to take his solar panels. He already had them installed on his roof, take them down. And now they're in his garage. Can't catch very much sunlight in the garage. So with that, I just want to say that there's many reasons to go solar and improve the value and comfort at home, take energy bills in your own hands, support local businesses, and help a local resource that will help the environment and the electrical grid. And for those reasons, I would urge you to support the bill and pass it this year. There's Kansans that have been affected by this and would like to get this going sooner than later. So it'd really make a difference if you could help them out sooner than later. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Do we have Jennifer Connolly on WebEx, private citizen? Not. And do we have Jeff Terhune? And Jeff, are you there?
Yes, sir. I'm here.
We'll try to get you turned up and let you testify, okay?
Wonderful.
And this is also as a proponent.
Yes, sir.
Are you ready?
I am.
Is he turned up enough? Now try it.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Great. Good morning. My name is Jeff Terhune. I am a proponent. First of all, I'd like to thank all the members in the committee hearing this. It's been a long time coming for myself and my family. I'd like to represent myself and the Turkey Creek subdivision. My wife and I were both civil servants. I work for the city of Wichita, she the school district, and we've got two teenage boys, one high school, one in college, both in sports and driving. You can imagine the cost of everything, especially electricity. I can't tell you how many times I'm going around turning stuff off. But so back in 2020, there was a large hailstorm, and at that time, we had to replace our roof, and we thought this was a great opportunity to take advantage of solar energy. We contacted several companies looking at the best product that we could get and try to save money. And with that being said, we went with the best option, and everything was great. We're looking forward to getting money. How can I say it? Getting to where we were actually making money above and beyond what we paid for the installation and the product. We were making great headway until about 15 months after we received a letter from the HOA saying that we had to remove them. Let me say that we did go through all the steps that were necessary, and there was kind of a misunderstanding with my submittal of the architectural request. We submitted it, and when it came back, it said no, not on the front of the house. So I called the HOA office, and I spoke with the executive assistant and stated that, hey, you got this letter, says not on the front of the house, we're putting it on the side of the garage. She said, not on the front of the house. And I stated again, just to make sure, well, I just want to make sure before we go forward that we're putting it on the side of the garage, not the front of the house. She said, not on the front of the house. Great. So I pulled the trigger and went ahead and got it installed. Not to get far into the weeds, but ever since then, we've accrued fees and fines to over $4,000. And then, of course, they put a lien on the house. And we were here just recently, last month, we received a letter from Folsom attorneys at law threatening to take us to court. So I think that all I really have to say from here is that I really hope that we can get this bill passed into law to keep these type of things from happening. I can't say that they're illegal, but I do feel as though they're unjust. Well, I'm not sure what else to say, but thank you for your time. And if you have any questions for me later, I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Jeff. And if you'll stand by, there may be some committee members have questions for you.
Yes.
One moment. We're going to see if there's any other proponents in the audience for 2268 that would like to speak. Not seeing any. Committee, is there any questions for the proponent testimonies? Yes, sir. Representative Gardner.
Yes, I would just like to ask the question, I have not found, but does anybody have any evidence that there is state statute that requires people to live in an area that has a homeowners association? And is there any statute that says there has to be HOAs? This seems to be a local issue where people have chosen to live in an HOA. And I'm from a rural area, and I'm a little bit unfamiliar with the HOA system, but it appears as though these HOAs are not really a function of the state. Does anybody have any information otherwise for me?
Mr. Horst,
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So
give your name as you get.
Mark Horst with King Solar. What we're looking at is a technology that didn't exist more than commercially available more than 15 or 20 years ago. And so what we're dealing with is homeowners that made a commitment not even knowing this existed. Now we're hitting a technology that, like, what do we do with it? And it's just becomes a he said, she said, and it's a difficult situation. Being from the country, you get to do whatever you want. I live in a rural town. I can do whatever I want. There's not even city permits I have to do on my home. And so we're looking for some clarity, some consistency for a new technology that's emerging and should be a right to sunlight, maybe is the way to say it.
Representative Essex.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is kind of along the same lines. There's a process to go through grievances with HOAs, correct? Is there anybody that can walk me through that process? What do I do if I have a grievance with my HOA?
Yeah, so Zach Pastora, representative of the Sierra Club. So my understanding is you can write your HOA council. You can attend the board meetings that are, every month or quarter or so, and you can petition your HOA for changes. Okay, that's been successful. I think we have a conferee in our written testimony, Joe Madden, that said he was able to navigate his homeowners association with some success, able to provide some changes over time. And then we have others in your written testimony that weren't successful, and like the conferee that you just heard from, now being sued by his HOA. A lot of these rules have been on the books. One conferee said 24 years. And so as Mark just stated, a lot of these are outdated provisions. I think back to when we used to have a big satellite dish, a 10-foot satellite dish, and now there's restrictions about that. But today you just have a streaming service in a little box inside your house. So anyway, I just think that there are some opportunities, but by and large, and what we've seen in other states is that it's too hard for people individually to navigate their own individual HOA. It depends on the leadership there. And if we could have a general opportunity provided by the state that said, this isn't allowed. You can have some design restrictions, but you can't outright ban solar. Then that would help out a lot of people more uniformly across the state. And I'll just say, I talked with a family member in Colorado, and Colorado has solar access laws on the books. And he said, well, how is that even possible? If it's legal by the city, then our HOA can't do anything counter to what's already permitted by the city. I said, hey, I'm sorry, but in Kansas, it's pretty clear homeowners associations are getting their way, regardless of whether it's allowed by city code or not. So,
since you are at the mic, sir,
yes,
aren't homeowner associations the members of the association are the people that own the house? Is that not correct?
My understanding is in most cases, yes.
So if that is the case, do they have a say in their quasi government of their homeowners association as to what rules are in the books?
Yes, they do. They can democratically decide all that. but my understanding, and don't take it from me, take it from the people who've actually written to you about this issue specifically, is that it's been hard to navigate, communicate with their HOA. There's been given some excuses as far as, oh, we need to bring in an architectural planner for design, yada, yada, yada. So, I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's more hardship than necessary is what we've gathered. And when we see more than half the states across the country do something like this, especially states around us, then why can't we do something like it too? So,
Thank you, Zach.
yep.
Questions? Yes, Representative Gardner.
Yes, I get this, kind of. But it appears to me the request here is for the state to usurp the power of local government and local governing and decision-making bodies, and to overrule them. And, we're called upon to uphold the Constitution of the state. And, I don't see any place in the Constitution that gives us that authority to be doing this. In fact, it says the delegation of powers of local legislation administration. The legislature may confer powers to local legislation administration and on the political subdivisions. And so, I think we're skating out here trying to solve local problems from the top down instead of people solving their problems in their local unit of government where they've chosen to live.
We have a response on WebEx. Are you there?
Yes, Jeffrey Hume,
Yes.
I believe. Yes, sir. I would like to speak to that as far as the HOAs being represented by the members of that subdivision or HOA. Yes, again, I believe that is true, and that's ideal because it's everybody in that association is represented by the people within that association. I myself, it's a little different. We're represented by the developer. So instead of the people within the association having a say, it's the developer with the say. Right across the street is another HOA that's as a developer, but they have a board and it is representing the people. So to speak to what that question about board, yeah, I believe it's both represented by the people, and then you have, to name it, but it seems as though a dictatorship. So,
All right. Thank you, sir.
throw that out. Thank you.
All right. Vice Chair Blex.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think my question would be for probably Malcolm, if you don't mind coming to the mic. Okay, Missouri passed this law in 2021, fairly recent. Have we had enough time to kind of see the impacts of that and issues that's coming about? Are the homeowners association accepting this, or is there a kickback, or do you know?
Great question. Again, my name is Malcolm Proudfit. I'm with Good Energy Solutions. Thank you for your question. I would say that the bill that was passed in Missouri resolved the bulk of the issues. Now, of course, there were still a couple of HOAs that raised a stink or tried to maintain the same overly restrictive rules rather than change them and make them more reasonable and allow the installation of solar in their communities. And what that bill did additionally was it gave the power to MOSIA or Renew Missouri, a couple of solar advocacy groups in Missouri, to enforce that law via the threat of a lawsuit or an actual lawsuit. There's only one lawsuit that I know of, but typically the threat of a lawsuit got it done.
Thank you for that. My next question was going to be, lawsuits and what the courts have decided. You say there's only one. Has that been decided? And
It is in
case whose favor was that?
it's in its early stages, so no results as of yet.
Okay. Thank you for that.
So thank you.
Thank you, sir. And Representative Barth and then Representative Melton.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry I was late to committee. I was testifying in another committee this morning. Looking at this bill and just hearing what I've heard so far today, what I'm hearing is that there's already a process for residents in these communities with HOAs to already go through today, where they can make a request to have solar or not have solar, or to maybe in 5 years we change the rules within the HOA with an agreements of a majority or something like that. That already exists today. And I think based on my knowledge of realtors and so forth, they have to disclose this by law that there's an HOA of a community. So if you're buying a house in a community, you know what you're getting into. I've lived in not only rural area, but I've lived in a community that had an HOA. I mean, it tells you things like you can or can't have a pool. You can have it above ground or below ground. You can have fences. You can have them like so high or so low. You can have a satellite dish or not, and where you can put it, even a tree type. You might have to have a front yard. Like, this is standard stuff that happens in HOAs that they have the right to do. Then you're choosing to live in that community, even though maybe your opinions change once you live in there. I just think that, those are just some thoughts I have from what I've heard so far today on the testimony and what I know about HOAs as well. So I just wanted to share those. I don't really have a question. Thanks.
A response, maybe?
I have a chance to.
Thank you, ma'am.
I think really all that we are asking in this bill is simply to place guardrails to protect the rights of homeowners to produce power from the abundant solar resource that we have in the state. Yes, there is a process. A quick example that I'll share, the marketing professional that we employ at Good Energy Solutions bought a home in an HOA community and intended to install solar. Come to find out, there's a blanket ban in the community against solar. And so over the course of a year, he actually ran to join the board of the HOA and change this rule from the inside. Now, that was a very difficult process for him, and it took a lot of time, and there was some friction between him and other neighbors. I think that this would just make things a lot clearer and easier to allow people to just simply access solar in their homes and avoid these blanket bans across the board. There's a process. It can certainly be improved upon.
Representative Melton.
Thank you. I'm kind of torn on this. Based on my previous world, I know at some point the HOAs have to be turned over to the homeowners. So that is their local voice. My concern would be I am a fan of solar. I like it. I don't have it, but I do like it. I just don't understand it enough to take that jump. But so my concern would be, in my neighborhood, I would not want to live next door to any of those bad installs. I mean, that would not help the value of my home in any way. So I think if we got involved, I don't know how there would be any kind of regulatory monitoring of the quality of the panels that are installed and what it does to the other residents. So I don't know. I got to think on this pretty hard, but thank you.
Sure. If I could respond to that as well, I would encourage you to reference Mr. Horst's written testimony. He gave some examples of reasonable rules that could be put in place to avoid some of these bad installs, right? And these projects would still need to go through the architectural review process that is typical right now within an HOA. And so you could be assured that, for example, conduit would run through the attic and not be visible on the roof. The color of the solar panels, that it would be it would work with the color of the roof shingles, that the panels would be parallel to the roof surface and not on a tilt, so to speak. And so we're not asking for blanket freedom to do whatever we want. Please place reasonable rules and restrictions in place on solar to avoid some of these bad installs. But let us install the solar in the first place too. Does that answer your question? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a few. I think the first goes to research. Do we know the percentage of Kansans that live in an HOA and where those are primarily concentrated?
Thank you, research.
Matthew Willis with KLRD. I do not know that information. I also do not believe it would be available as outside of maybe, I could possibly look, but where HOAs are largely created at a very kind of local level when those subdivisions are being created. I'm not sure how much of a state registry would be available. My assumption, however, would be that they are likely accumulated around metropolitan areas more so. So there's not a reason why they couldn't exist in a county or more rural area.
More question?
I think this one is for Zach. I grew up in a house with solar panels. My Republican father took advantage of the tax credit and slapped them up on our house. And their panels were not flat to the roof, but like were in the shape of the roof. Our neighbors 2 doors down, theirs are on the side of the house and they're still there and they don't look good. So I'm wondering if maybe the current HOA rules are based on outdated technology. I haven't seen any panels that look like what my parents had or their neighbors still have. And like there are solar panels going up 4 streets down from me right now, and they're clearly going to be right on the house. I mean, I wonder if we're dealing with just things that don't exist anymore. Nobody installs panels like that anymore. Is that?
Yeah, Zach Pastora, Kansas Sierra Club. Yes, that's what we've gathered is a lot of these restrictions are outdated. They dealt with more clunky solar panel modules. Today, they're a lot more thin, sleek. We got different color varieties. Even now, you have almost thin film solar panel technology that almost acts like a roof shingle itself. So I think that is the case. I also say to the homeowners association's prevalency in Kansas, I think in my literature research, I saw that, potentially 80% of people in suburb or urban areas live in an HOA. And if you'll refer to your testimony, the Community Associations Institute provide written only testimony. They're in support of the bill. They represent 2,000 HOA or community associations in Kansas, 154. 154,000 Kansans. So I'd encourage you to take a look at their testimony, but they support the bill as written.
And frankly, there may be a resource for how many there are in the state.
Yep.
Last one, I promise. There are no opponents to this bill. I notified my constituents because I've heard about this. I've heard about it from my neighbor who was the manager of our HOA until recently. And I think my HOA is great, by the way. But this hearing was publicly announced. Everybody has had appropriate time. HOAs certainly have more staff and resources than citizens. And there are no opponents here.
We haven't gotten to that point yet. We'll find out whether there are or not. Thank you. One moment, sir. I have a question from Representative Barth.
Thank you, Chairman Berquist. I think this goes to, I'm not sure, I forgot what your name was, from the Energy Solutions that spoke earlier.
Malcolm Profit.
Malcolm, okay.
Good Energy Solutions. Thank you.
You mentioned the homeowner example where they did not read their HOA. Did they tell you why? And what was that reason? They did not read their HOA when they moved into it and bought a house there.
They didn't work for me when they originally purchased this home, and so solar wasn't on their horizon, or had they didn't even know about solar before they came to work for me. But regardless, by living in this community and by being under a president and vice president who opposed solar purely for political reasons, they were denied the right to even install solar on their home.
Okay. I don't oppose solar on homes. I do respect local decision-making and homeowners associations that exist, because the example you just gave, you have people that are already there that choose not to and signed up for what they signed up for, who maybe did read the HOA in their community. I think that was my question there.
I will add that it was not just my one employee that wanted solar in the community. That was kind of what he ran on when he tried to become the president of the community. And there are now multiple households that we have either provided a proposal for or installed solar on, actually in that community. So it wasn't just a singular issue for my one employee. And thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there any other questions from the committee before we move on to other testimony? Okay. Not seeing anything. Yes, sir.
Heard how from several of the members how homeowners should read their HOA requirements. I've lived in my house 30 years. There was nothing about solar when I moved into mine. This is passed after I moved in. Technology has changed, and I don't want to move to a different subdivision just because of this one issue. My kids have lived there their entire life, and so I think we should be allowed to use this technology. So I just want to bring that up. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Representative Barth.
Sir, would you mind staying for a question if you don't mind?
Okay, you
don't mind.
Follow up. Okay.
When the HOA was formed, did they form a board and have proceedings and open meetings for you to attend and go through that process?
Yes, they did.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir. As proponents, we have written only testimony from Jay and Ellen Portnoy. We have also Jonathan Smith. We have Sam Passer, Thomas Arnhold, Monica Steinley, Benjamin Price, Joseph Madden, Carrie Waterman, J.C. Moore, Rachel McGonigal, Barbara Nesmith, and Jason Harrison. I will now open the floor to any neutral testimony. We have a WebEx, excuse me. Someone on WebEx had something else to add? Hello? Someone had their hand up on WebEx.
Sorry, Chairman Berquist. I'm not sure about the protocol here, but I would like to address Representative Barth's
That'd be fine.
about. Thank you. Thank you. Again, Jefferson here. I appreciate Representative Barth being the devil's advocate here on this. There is a process. I wasn't fully aware of the covenants, but I knew when we were going to purchase the solar panels, I looked into it and it said not on the front of the house. So we went forward. March of 2023, the HOA instituted an amendment saying that it couldn't be seen from the front facing the street. So I think there's could be a little to be said about that. People moving into subdivisions not really knowing everything, just it's a lot to be asked. Thank you. I just wanted to throw my 2 cents in there.
Thank you, sir. Is there any reason why I shouldn't turn on the mic before I talk? Do we have any neutral testimony? If not, any neutral testimony? Do we have any opponent testimony to House Bill 2268, either online or in the audience? And not seeing any, we will close the hearing for House Bill 2268. Now we're going to move to House Bill 2493. I will give the precursor before the reviser gives the brief that we are aware that some are here as proponent, and we don't have you listed. That doesn't mean you won't be able to give your testimony. Mr. Reviser, House Bill 2493.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. House Bill 2493 would create new statutes regarding rural water districts. Under this bill, the board of directors of a rural water district would be required to use a public bidding process for any contracts that are awarded in excess of $25,000 for the construction, installation, or replacement of the water district facilities, water lines, pump stations, or other buildings. There is a requirement that notice seeking bids for such work must be provided at least 20 days prior to awarding the contract by publication in a newspaper of general circulation in the county. There's an alternative notice for posting if there is no such newspaper. The bill also clarifies that this process would not apply to contracts for professional services, purchasing insurance, or any work that is necessary due to an emergency based on the public health or safety as determined by the Water District Board. This would be a part of the statutes that govern rural water districts under state law 82A-612 and following, and would go into effect on July 1st of this year. I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Representative Amix.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question that I would have is on the declaration of emergency, and that it's got to be declared by the district board. If this happens in the middle of the night, if there's such emergency, does the board have to be called? How does that happen?
We are still talking about work in excess of $25,000. So this would have to be repair work in excess of $25,000. But yes, the repairs or replacements would have to be emergency that's declared by the district board. So they would have to have some kind of process in which the board declared an emergency in order to authorize an award of a contract in excess of $25,000 to conduct that replacement or repair.
Okay. But if I could, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Okay. But the board actually has to make that decision somehow.
They would have to develop some kind of process for that decision. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Representative Blex.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Jason. Basically, the way I'm reading it, if it's in excess of 25,000, regardless, they still have to bid it. Am I reading that correctly? Or will they have the ability to go through an emergency clause?
Not if it's an emergency. Any repairs or replacements when there's an emergency that's declared by the district board would not be subject to that public bidding process.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Other questions? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And if I'm reading this correctly, then the board will have to accept the lowest bid, but it says lowest and best bid. And so if the board determined that the best bid was not the lowest bid, would they be still able to accept the bid that they wanted rather than the lowest bid?
Yes, I believe because both qualifiers are in that language that both would apply. And so the board would make a determination as to what is both the lowest and the best bid. And so the absolute lowest price bid would not necessarily have to be accepted if it was not also the best bid that was offered.
Can I ask one more question about that then? As far as determining the best bid, is that left solely to the board, or are there any statutory requirements for determining what the best bid would be?
There is no specific statutory requirement provided in this bill or in statutes governing rural water districts. Generally, under public bidding processes and laws, governmental bodies have to make a determination as to what is in the best interest as a governing body for that jurisdiction when evaluating bids. And that, of course, could be subject to a court challenge if the board acts in some way that is arbitrary or capricious in selecting a contract. And there's evidence that their selection of a contractor was not clearly in the best interest of their jurisdiction. So there is some consideration as to the rationality and the reasonableness of the decision made by the governing body.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Thank you, sir. We're going to start with Representative Tim Johnson for proponent testimony, and you can take the lead from there. We are, like I said, we are missing a list of proponents, but we understand there is some. So thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee. It's nice to be here this morning on parade day when everybody else is there and we're not. My intern is passing around a document that you did not get. I want to point out that originally this was sent to the Water Committee because they saw it as a water bill. And the chair of the Water Committee, we began our preparation, sent documents there. One of those that you did not get, I don't believe, was the letter from Adam Profit, who is the budget normally checks. And in that letter that was addressed to Representative Minix states that the Kansas Water Office states there is no fiscal effect on counties and no unless they are operating their own rural water district and has no impact on the state. And we can provide that letter, but that was sent to the Water Committee. We were able to get it switched over here because this is truly a local governmental issue. And apparently some of the documents that we had sent. So one of those is the letter from the Leavenworth County Commissioners that initiated this because of problems that they were having. So you have that to look at as I speak. Want to point out this affects only rural water districts. It does not impact municipal governments or other local boards of government, only the rural water districts. This is a requirement that is in effect a tax bill. We're trying to allow our counties to cut what they have to spend. And if they have high bills because we're not doing competitive bidding, it's taking away from their overall structure. And what happens? They have to bring in more money and the mills go up. And clearly this legislature this year is working, even if it's a small item. Rural water boards are the only governing body not required to seek competitive bids on large projects, and that's defined over 25,000. That involves county funds. This bill does not impact how a rural water district handles projects of their own. For example, we have to relocate some water lines because of road construction. That's a county cost. The rural water district can go select anybody they want, do the work, and charge any fee that they want. No bidding whatsoever. We think that this gives rural water districts still great latitude. We're not taking a lot away from them. And the emergency question that I heard is also, that is very clear, something we need to talk about, and I appreciate that question. an emergency at night, it's my understanding they can begin work on it. And if there's going to be follow-up, I would assume that then they could meet as a board. So you have that resolution. Going to hear from our county in Leavenworth, one of our workers, and a gentleman that represents one of the water districts as a board member. We have had several issues in Leavenworth County, one that's under criminal investigation at this time involving a water district. So this does matter. But as we look back and did our research, Kansas Attorney General's opinion back some time ago, here were the key words that addressed this issue. Awarding contracts by public bid letting encourage competition, allows all contractors an equal opportunity, and avoids any appearance of impropriety or favoritism. So I thank you for listening to our proposal, and I'll stand for questions at the appropriate time.
Yes, sir. If you would, if you know any of the other proponents, you are welcome to introduce them and get it. Are there other proponents here to testify?
Yes, I have two others from our county, Road and Bridge. I'll let him give his full title, and he is representing our county. By the way, our county commissioners are meeting as we speak, which is the reason I don't have one of the county commissioners here.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time today, members of the committee. I'm here to speak on behalf of the Leavenworth County Board of County Commissioners. I am Bill Knoll. I'm the Public Works Director for Leavenworth County. Leavenworth County is a growing county here in the state. Our population is continuing to expand, as many of the counties in Northeast Kansas are. This is a county issue because it has large expenditures. It is the only large expenditure that is planned for years in advance that is not bid. We recently, over the past 4 months, have spent over $300,000 paying for waterline relocations that were not bid, that had been planned out for years. And you can ask yourself if this is just a local problem or if this is a state problem. And I'd like to hit on a couple of those projects that we recently did. One of those projects is a 2-mile roadway improvement project that had a waterline relocation cost of $250,000. We received multiple prices, up to $305,000 from the Rural Water District. Their price seemed to be variable depending upon the month and the time of the expenditure. That project was funded both by the Kansas Cost Share Program and by Senator Moran's office sponsoring a bill for congressionally directed spending. So we had over $3 million in both state and federal funds involved in that project. And it had an expenditure of over $250,000 that had been planned for years that was not bid. The second project that recently happened in the past quarter was for $65,000 worth of road borings. That project was a high-risk rural roads project through KDOT. It was the highest crash accident location in the entire county. It has a daily traffic count that exceeds most KDOT highways. It's over 3,500 vehicles a day and has multiple injury and fatality accidents over the past 5 years. And so these projects are very important to the community. They're very important to the safety of the transportation public. But I cannot stand before you here today and say that those funds were spent in the best and fair and reasonable manner, because there isn't any transparency in the bid processes that are happening within the rural water districts. And to speak to a couple of the points here today that were already brought up, local governments, water districts, school boards, all of these different entities are governed by board of directors. They all are allowed to make emergency purchases based upon time of incident occurrences. There is authority that can be placed under the jurisdiction that allows for the operator or the manager to make a certain expenditure in excess of the $25,000 that can be delegated to a specific entity. So in the case of a county government, the county administrator has the authority to spend additional funds on an emergency basis if something were to occur. In the instance of a water line breaking in the middle of the night, obviously you'd have to break a lot of water line to hit a $25,000 expenditure in a rural area, because these are just rural water districts. These are not your large water mains where you're going to be getting into metropolitan areas that would have a lot of streets and curb and gutter. Secondly, to the point of the lowest and best bid, this bill is badly needed extension of existing law. KSA 19-214 already requires all expenditures for government entities, including school districts, drainage districts, water districts, not water districts, but to have public lettings. And in their language, it states the bill serves in the best interest of its citizens, and public letting will be provided to the lowest and best bid. There are other definitions of what constitutes a best bid within state statute already, because this is a tried and true state law that applies all throughout the state and all other government entities except for the quasi-governmental entities of rural water districts. To finish, would be happy to answer any questions, but these entities are also governed by the KCC. They have jurisdictional boundaries within these rural water districts. And so you are going to live in a rural water district if you live in a rural area in the state of Kansas and you're not serviced by well water. And so they have a monopoly on any given location, whether it's this monopoly or that monopoly. It's still a utility monopoly. And so that monopoly is further solidified by the fact that they do not have to bid planned capital expenditures. And so like counties and like schools and like other entities, they should have a 5-year CIP with planned expenditures for expansion of water lines and other things that within their districts, whether that be water towers or rural water buildings, but those things should be bid. And I think it would be appropriate here today for that discussion to occur. Thank you.
If you would stay there for the moment, and we'll see if the committee has any questions for you or the other conferee. Yes, Representative Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your testimony today. In those two major projects that you mentioned in your testimony, was there anything in state statute that would have prevented competitive bidding on those projects by the local water board if they had chose to do that?
No, there is not. And I could cite other projects that have been recently done in Leavenworth County. It is our policy that we always offer to bid the water line relocation as an ad alternate to our existing construction bid in order to have a price just for that and have the contractor who is the general contractor of the project install that. We also have in place the offer that it will be inspected by a KDOT certified inspector, because we require KDOT certified inspectors. And on all of the KDOT projects and the projects that I've referenced here today, they would be required by the FHWA and by KDOT to have certified inspectors on site. And so it is the policy of Leavenworth County to always offer county services to include that as an ad alternate to the bid.
Okay, thank you very much.
Representative Amix.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your comments and thanks for clearing up my question earlier. Generally, this would be a local issue. You know, we hear these all the time. Sounds like, but in your opinion, there's no other solution that exists to be able to correct this problem for the county, correct?
There is no other solution, or the county would have already addressed that solution at this time. The county has no way of requiring a rural water district to bid any of the work on any county project, and no one in the state has that authority to force a water district to do that.
So, Mr. Chairman, like, if I could, like so many of the things that we're asked to chime in on has to do with the fact that there's generally no other solution and we got to pick one sooner or later. So anyway, thank you.
Representative Barth.
Thank you, Chairman Berquist. And to expand off of what Representative from Lawrence asked, can you please tell us like what that conversation was like with the board that makes these decisions as to why they did not go through a bidding process? I want to hear kind of what actually happened at the local level already.
At the local level, we met with the water district on multiple occasions. We offered our services. We do this on projects every year, multiple projects. I think we're building 6 bridges this year. in doing 2.5 miles of roadway rehabilitation. So we offered to identify the locations of the waterline conflicts. We offered to have them produce with their professional services contractor in conjunction with our engineer a plan schematic for the waterline relocation. And we offered to bid that for them at no cost. And it was just stated that they wanted to use their contractor because they have a rapport with this person and they trust their work. Well, there are plenty of qualified contractors. There are union contractors in the county. There are good non-union contractors in the county, and this work would be inspected by a state inspector and being paid for in part by state and federal funds. So it seems appropriate that if we're going to follow the policies for right-of-way acquisition that are federal and state, and we're going to follow these federal and state guidelines that are very bureaucratic on every other front, it seems appropriate that we would also make sure that these water districts are both transparent and open to the bidding process.
That helps a lot. I kind of get their side though on working with somebody that they trust, because I live in a rural area as well. And, you know, depending on who you hire and who you get, your roads could be a mess, or, you know, water and things of that nature. So what kind of offerings do you have of guarantees that they're going to perform to the level of the work if they're lowest bid, lowest, low bid, low, best bid, low, lowest and best bid?
There are requirements of being a certified operator in the state of Kansas for water line installations. There are qualifications. You can make a contractor come in and become certified with your water district through some sort of training online or in-person training process. There are all kinds of avenues to go about making sure that you're getting bids from competitive bids from contractors who are reputable. And to that point, I guess, if I'm an appointed official of a board of county commissioners that in a county that has, just in the last 6 months, probably 600 lots that have been rezoned and platted, mostly in the southeast portion as a result of the Panasonic plant. And it would not be appropriate for the Board of County Commissioners or myself to state that I have a contractor in place that if you want to build a subdivision roadway that I am comfortable with and know that they are reputable and that they will do good work, because it is a fair and open competitive market, and we do inspect these roadways. And there is a process to go through to make sure that that is correctly done. And it's not my cousin or my cousin's friend or some other person that I've worked with for 20 years.
I'm going to recognize Representative Johnson, then Representative Blacks has a question. Thank you.
We had a third proponent who is actually a board member of a rural water district, Mr. Mitchner from Rural Water District 7. He's appearing as a private citizen today.
My apologies, and yes, Mr. Mitchell.
I'm Mitch Mitchner. I am currently on the board of directors for the Leavenworth County Rural Water District number 7. However, I'm not representing the board today. I'm here as a private citizen, as a patron of the district. And I'm speaking firsthand why this bill is important to pass. Our district started a project approximately a year and a half ago. A company was awarded the job and no bids were allowed. 5 of our 7 current members were on the board when this decision was made, and nobody has articulated even one example of how this was a benefit to the patrons. The project is currently on hold due to financial reasons. The project is costing more than anticipated. It's already over $300,000. If this bill had been in place earlier, this could have been avoided. As the system is now, the patrons are basically powerless to direct how their money is spent, as long as the board can award jobs and projects to whoever they wish. The bill also provides additional benefits to the patrons by requiring the contractor to be bonded and insured. It just makes common sense to pass the bill. I think it's in the public's best interest to pass the bill. And thank you for letting me have a voice.
Would you say this is something of, for the next guy at least, this for the next project at least, in your hopes for this bill is so that it doesn't happen again?
Yes, sir.
Or in any way to remediate your situation now?
I don't know if it could be soon enough to help with this project. Hopefully it will be, because there's still half of the project to go. But that will all be timing, but this bill would help in the future, for sure.
Appreciate your testimony. Any questions for Mr. Mitchner? Mitchner, right?
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Blex.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Public Works Director, I apologize, didn't get your name. The County of Leavenworth Board of Commissioners, this letter that was passed out indicates, this was dated November the 22nd of 23, and it indicates a request for an amendment that would require rural water districts to use competitive public bidding in construction projects that involve the use of county funds to reallocate district facilities. As I'm reading the bill, maybe the reviser can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't see a restriction to county funds. So I guess my question to you, are you guys planning to bringing them, if we do pass this bill out as it's written, are you planning on bringing an amendment? Because even in your last paragraph, it indicates you looking at projects that involve county funds. Am I reading that correctly or understanding you?
No, you are reading that correctly. I think at the time, the Board of County Commissioners didn't want to overstep their authority in respect to allowing the members of whatever governing committee was going to hear this today to weigh in on whether it's appropriate outside of the use of county funds. We are specifically concerned with the use of the county funds because that is what affects our mill levy and our local tax dollars and our grants that we are getting. I think it's appropriate for Representative Johnson to speak on behalf of the entirety of the bill, but from the county's perspective, we did not want to overstep our authority and make requests that really would be more appropriate for the representative to make outside the county expenditures.
Follow up. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ironically, if we probably pass this bill as written, that would cover not only county funds, but all other projects across the state. Am I correct with that? Maybe reviser is understanding we're not just dealing with county funds in this bill. Am I correct?
Mr. Chairman, members committee, no, this would apply to contracts that are financed from whatever source of funds that are approved by the rural water district.
Oh, okay. One more. I'm sorry. I was giving you wrong message there. In your county, only a certified water contractor, rural water contractor can do the work. Am I correct? I know in my county, it's kind of that way, and same with septics, and they have kind of sometimes sole source, only certain people can do it. But what you're actually proposing, there was no bidding process even amongst those certified operators. Am I correct?
Yes, that is completely correct. There are operators within the county, probably a dozen or more, who are certified. Often it is the same ones who are certified to do lateral fields and other type of work in that same range of PVC pipe and underground utilities. But no, they were not allowed to bid the project, or the water districts chose to just use their on-call provider at the cost that he provided.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I appreciate that answer. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I do have a question for you as a follow-up here, reading through the bill. And it does state that this would be approved by the attorney, where it talks about line 21 through 25, section C there, the attorney for the district. Not every district has their own attorney on board for bonding, it talks about. So this is saying that any project over 25,000 would need to be bonded. Is that what it means? How I'm reading this?
Yes, I believe that'd be accurate. I've never dealt with a water district either in either county government that I've worked for that didn't have a law firm on sort of retainage. But it could. I review bonds. You just have to make sure that they're in the amount of the replacement cost. It's not a overly complicated process. So. Yes, that is my understanding.
I have one other question about the bill, line 3031, where it talks about repairs, replacements of any facilities. It lists pump stations, and in my mind, pump stations are sewage pump stations, but are there water pump stations also? And do we need to spell that out with an amendment to say that specifically?
I'm not an expert in the water field, but there are pump stations that boost water pressure. So as you get further away from the water towers, if you have lower water pressure areas, or you're near the well and you're trying to do a pump station to pump the water up into your water tower, it is a very expensive expenditure. And on the one project that we did have that I referenced earlier, there is a pump station on that roadway. And so there are pump stations. I know the water district that I live in, there are 3 pump stations. There's a pump station at the old water tower for pressure. There's a pump station at the well, and there's a pump station at the water tower. So there's 3.
I would defer to Jason maybe on that one if we need to have it specify a water.
Did you have something? Oh. Okay. All right. Hey, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll catch up with using the microphone. And we are now moving to neutral testimony. If there's any neutral testimony in the audience, please come to the microphone and state your name. Not seeing any. We have a number of written opponent testimony. Moving to opponent testimony, we have Brenda Atkins, Rural Water District 3 in Jackson County. Terry Brown, District Manager, Rural Water District 5, Butler County. Mike Fulkerson, General Manager, Consolidated Rural Water District, Leavenworth County. Eldon Pankratz, Marion County, Rural Water District number 4. Elmer Runabaum, Kansas Rural Water Association, and Michelle Watts, Harvey County Rural Water District number 1. You have their written testimony online, and I will again state that any testimony that was submitted, our apologies that they have not been understood to be posted. There may have been a glitch in our being able to receive them. So watch for those. We will make disposition of this bill most likely next Monday. And so watch for that. And we appreciate your time. And this hearing is closed and this meeting is closed.